You think you know how dirty money moves? Think again. Behind the polished glass doors of respectable banks, inside luxury penthouses overlooking Miami's shoreline, and through the shadowed back rooms of jewelers and real estate offices, billions of dollars in cartel cash disappeared, vanished, only to reappear as spotless, legitimate fortunes. This is the untold truth about the world's largest money laundering bust, an operation so deep, so dangerous, that even seasoned FBI agents called it walking through hell in a designer suit. I should know, because I was there. The first rule of infiltrating a cartel's money network is simple. You can't just play the part. You have to become it. For me, that meant erasing Robert Mazur, the quiet federal agent from Tampa, and giving life to Bob Musella, international financier, dealmaker, and mob-connected businessman with a taste for champagne and risk. I had to look like a man who could make $10 million vanish without a trace and return it as clean as bottled water. That meant a tailored suit that whispered exclusive, an accent of arrogance in my voice, and an endless supply of patience. Because in the world of money laundering, trust is built one drink, one handshake, and one lie at a time. It started small, an introduction here, a favor there. Then one night in a dimly lit restaurant in Panama City, I found myself staring across the table at a man whose very name made DEA veterans nervous. A broker for the Medellin cartel. He didn't deal in drugs. He dealt in something far more dangerous: numbers. In his leather-bound notebook was the lifeblood of the cartel: accounts, shell corporations, offshore trusts, and an army of smurfs who would deposit under-the-radar amounts of cash into dozens of banks every single day. He leaned in. "Bob, you move money quiet. I like quiet men. Quiet men stay alive." It was supposed to be a test. $1 million in dirty cash. 2 weeks to make it disappear. The pickup was simple, or so I thought. A warehouse in New Jersey, a man with a duffel bag, and an unspoken agreement that if I failed, my body would vanish with the money. I moved it through a fake mortgage company I controlled, layering it with transactions so complex even trained auditors would get lost in the paper trail. From there, it went to a jewelry chain, diamonds bought, resold, and paid for in clean wire transfers. When the money came back to the cartel, sparkling and legal, I got the call: "Bob, welcome to the family." Within months, I was managing tens of millions. I had an open line to cartel accountants in Bogota, Cali, and Miami. Banks, legitimate, respected banks, rolled out red carpets for me. They didn't ask where the money came from. They asked how much I wanted to deposit. One banker in Manhattan whispered over drinks, "Our job isn't to question the source. Our job is to make rich clients richer." That was the problem. These weren't rogue tellers or back-alley money men. These were boardrooms full of Ivy League executives nodding along as cartel funds flowed through their accounts. Undercover work has a smell, not the kind you notice right away. More like a faint, metallic tang of fear that seeps into your clothes, your skin, your dreams. Every meeting was wired. Every handshake was recorded. My life depended on staying in character, not just in front of the cartel, but in front of the bankers, the brokers, even the waiters serving us drinks. One slip, one wrong name, one unfamiliar face, and I wouldn't make it home. Sometimes, when I was alone in my hotel room, I'd stare at my reflection and wonder if Bob Musella was becoming more real than Robert Mazur. It all came to a head in Geneva. The Swiss banker I was meeting had been vouched for by the cartel's inner circle. I was told he could move $500 million without blinking. $500 million. That's not cash you stuff in suitcases. That's cash you hide inside the machinery of the global economy. Stocks, bonds, trade deals, insurance claims. He lit a cigar, smiled, and said, "Mr. Musella, money is like water. It always finds a way." I wanted to believe I was in control. But in that moment, I realized something chilling. I wasn't just infiltrating the cartel's world. I was helping it function. It was 2:14 a.m. when my secure line rang. A voice I didn't recognize said, "They know about you. Leave now." I froze. I couldn't tell if it was a bluff or the beginning of my death sentence. I grabbed the bugged briefcase, the encrypted tapes, and my fake IDs. My handler's last instruction echoed in my mind: "If they suspect you, you won't have time to explain." I was halfway to the airport when I saw the black SUV in my rearview mirror. No headlights, no plates, Closing in, the rearview mirror showed no mercy. A black SUV, lights off, moving like a shadow that had found my name. This wasn't a random tale. This was a cartel message. We see you. In part 1, you learned how I became Bob Musella, a high-rolling money man for the Medellin cartel, infiltrating their billion-dollar laundering network. You saw how banks, brokers, and so-called legitimate corporations all played a part in washing blood money clean. But what you didn't see, what I haven't told you until now, is the night I learned that money laundering isn't the cartel's most dangerous weapon. Fear is. The SUV trailed me through Miami's empty streets, keeping just enough distance to play with my nerves. My handler's voice was in my head. Don't lead them to your safe house. I turned down Collins Avenue, ducked into a parking garage, and slid into a dark corner. I killed the lights, cut the engine, and waited. Footsteps echoed. Slow. Deliberate. 2 men appeared in the faint glow of the exit sign. Suits. No ties. No expressions. One carried a leather case. The other had a hand in his jacket. The shorter one smiled. Mr. Musella, you missed our meeting. They weren't here to kill me. Not yet. They were here to remind me who owned the game. The taller one opened the leather case. Bundles of $100 bills, stacked in neat bricks. $500,000, he said. From the Colombians. They want it moved by Thursday. The smile disappeared. If you can't, they'll find someone who can. But you won't like how they replace you. They left without another word. The message was clear. No excuses, no delays, no second chances. 2 days later, I flew to Panama to move the $500,000. That's where I met the man who almost destroyed the entire operation. Victor Alcaraz, a high-ranking officer at Banco de la República. Victor was charming, polished, and deeply corrupt. He promised to funnel the funds through his investment arm, splitting them into offshore accounts across Liechtenstein, the Cayman Islands, and Luxembourg. We toasted to partnership. But what I didn't know was that Victor had already started talking to a rival cartel, the Cali organization, and my name was part of the trade. Money laundering has 3 stages: placement, layering, and integration. The first stage, placement, was easy. Victor's bank took the $500,000 in cash without blinking. The second, layering, was where the art came in. We buried the money in fake export invoices for coffee shipments, corporate bonds that didn't exist, and insurance claims for ships that never sailed. By the time it reached integration, the funds were indistinguishable from legitimate business profits. On paper, it was all clean. In reality, every dollar still smelled like gunpowder and blood. In the summer of '87, Victor invited me to a private yacht party in Cartagena. Politicians, cartel lieutenants, and international bankers mingled over champagne while armed guards patrolled the deck. I stayed in character, laughing, drinking, making deals, but my mind was elsewhere. My undercover team had picked up chatter about a planned assassination. The target? A financial asset who'd grown too valuable to be trusted. I had to know if it was me. The answer came from an unexpected place. A drunk cartel accountant who staggered up to me, glass in hand, and whispered, "Careful, Bob. Your name's in the little black book." That little black book wasn't a myth. It was the cartel's kill list, written in code, carried by their enforcers. Once your name went in, it never came out. I excused myself, slipped below deck, and found the accountant's briefcase. Inside was a notebook, names, dates, payments. My cover name was there, underlined twice. I had to get off that yacht without raising suspicion. I told Victor the first was heading below to take a call. Instead, I dove, fully clothed, into the dark water. A small fishing boat hired by my team pulled me out 100 yards away. By dawn, I was back in Miami, sitting in a safe house with my handler, dripping seawater on the floor. "We're pulling you," he said. "No," I told him. "Not yet. I'm closer than ever." Weeks later, my patience paid off. The cartel's inner circle invited me to a meeting in Geneva to discuss laundering an unprecedented sum, $1 billion over 18 months. This was the jackpot. If I could get them to commit, we'd have the evidence to take down banks, brokers, and cartel leaders in one coordinated strike. But there was a catch. The meeting would be hosted by the cartel's most feared figure, Hernando El Espectro Diaz. El Espectro didn't trust anyone. He had a reputation for killing men mid-meeting just to see who flinched. The meeting was set for the Grand Kempinski Hotel, top floor, private suite. My room was 2 doors down, wired with hidden cameras and audio mics. I arrived early, carrying the briefcase with sample documents and transaction blueprints. My hands were steady, but my pulse was racing. The door opened. El Espectro stepped in, tall, broad-shouldered, with eyes that never blinked. He sat down, leaned forward, and said, "Bob Musella, you've made my friends very rich. But you know what happens to men who make me poor?" He handed me a document, an account statement from one of my laundering routes. Someone had inserted a $2 million discrepancy. It wasn't me. It was Victor. El Espectro's voice dropped. "You have 1 hour to explain, or you leave this room in a bag." I knew if I blamed Victor outright, I'd be signing his death warrant, and possibly mine if El Espectro thought I was lying. I had to think fast. I glanced at my watch. 59 minutes left. The cartel's deadliest enforcer was staring me down, waiting for my answer. Somewhere in the hotel, my backup team was listening, but they couldn't come in without blowing the entire operation. This was it. One wrong word, and the world's largest money laundering bust would end with my body floating in Lake Geneva. The courtroom was silent, so silent that even the sound of the judge adjusting his robe felt like a thunderclap. Robert Mazur sat at the witness stand, every camera lens in the room fixed on him. His testimony was the final blow in a 5-year operation that had reached the highest echelons of the Medellin and Cali cartels. But today, it wasn't just the cartels on trial. It was the banks. The billion-dollar institutions that had smiled politely while rivers of drug money flowed through their accounts. Months before this moment, Mazur and his small task force had orchestrated the last stage of the sting. They called it Operation Cinderblock, a name that meant once you were caught, there was no escape. The plan was deceptively simple. Stage a final deal worth $100 million in laundering. Invite every major player who had ever touched the dirty money. Cartel liaisons, bank managers, shell company CEOs. Lock the doors when the last handshake was made. But simplicity in paper is chaos in execution. The meeting was set at a lavish private resort in Panama, hidden behind the guise of a corporate financial summit. Guests arrived in private jets, wearing gold watches that could buy entire neighborhoods. They believed Mazur was still Bob Musella, the wealthy, mob-connected businessman who never asked too many questions. What they didn't know was that every champagne glass, every leather chair, and every decorative plant in the conference room was wired with hidden microphones. The slip-up. Halfway through the gathering, one of the Cali cartel's top accountants leaned over to Mazur and whispered, "After this, we'll move the rest through Zurich. No one touches Zurich." That was the key. For months, investigators had struggled to prove that certain European banks were knowingly participating. This slip-up would connect the dots. Mazur excused himself, stepped into a hallway, and sent the prearranged signal, a tap on his gold cufflink, twice. Outside, FBI agents disguised as resort staff quietly moved into position. When the last business deal document was signed, the room's heavy oak doors slammed shut. Armed agents poured in from every corner. Some guests froze in shock. Others bolted for exits they thought were secret, only to find more agents waiting. One bank vice president tried to casually sip his wine, as though nothing was happening. Mazur never forgot the way the man's hand trembled, red liquid sloshing against the crystal. By the end of that day, 47 high-level arrests had been made. International warrants spread like wildfire. Entire corporate offices were raided. The cartel's financial network, carefully built over decades, was shredded in weeks. The public was stunned. For the first time, it wasn't just drug lords in handcuffs. It was bankers in tailored suits. But the celebration didn't last long. The threats began. 2 days after the arrests, Mazur received a message slipped under his hotel room door. No signature, no return address, just a short line written in red ink. "We know who you really are." That night, a black SUV followed him for 12 city blocks before vanishing into the dark. The trial that followed became one of the most closely watched in financial crime history. Defense attorneys tried everything, claiming entrapment, fabricated evidence, even accusing Mazur of being the real criminal. But the tapes didn't lie. The jury listened to hours of secret recordings, discussions of cleaning money through jewelry chains, luxury yachts, mortgage brokerages. Each voice belonged to someone now sitting just a few feet from them, pale and silent. When the verdicts came, they were devastating. multiple cartel liaisons, life sentences, several international bankers, decades in prison, banks, forced to pay hundreds of millions in fines. For Mazer, victory came at a cost. His cover was blown worldwide. He could never use his old identity again. Moving from city to city became his new normal. His family lived under constant security watch. And yet, he knew it was worth it. Billions of cartel dollars had been cut off. Corrupt banking pipelines were exposed. A message had been sent: launder drug money, and you're as guilty as the dealers selling it on the street. But was it really over? Weeks after the final verdict, Mazer got a phone call from a former contact inside law enforcement. "We've picked up chatter," the voice said. "Something big is moving, bigger than before, and you're not going to believe who's behind it." Mazer didn't answer right away. He stared at the city lights outside his window, thinking about how many times he'd sworn he was done. But the truth was, dirty money never stopped flowing. It only changed direction. The informant spoke again. "You want in? We need someone who knows how to dance with devils." Mazer's lips curled into a grim smile. He'd just closed the chapter on the world's largest money laundering bust,